Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Friday edition of the Clay, Travis, and Buck Sexton Show. We've got a lot to get to with you today, and it is a Friday, so definitely want to hear from you throughout the show. 800-282-2882. Headline here from Daily Mail: Russia is now at war with NATO and the West. Putin has taken the conflict in Ukraine to a different stage following Germany and the U.S.'s decision to supply tanks. U.S. decided, then Germany decided. We will discuss that with you. Plus, we have Kim Strassel, a brilliant columnist for the Wall Street Journal, will be joining us later on. Remember how they talked about banning gas stoves for a day or two, and then the defense was, why are the right-wingers talking about banning gas stoves? That's crazy. We're not going to let them get away with that. There is, in fact, a campaign to make you think your gas stove is dangerous and bad for the environment, dangerous to you and bad for the environment, with some very powerful interests involved. And they just realized it looked bad, and so they tried to walk back from it. Also interesting, the Biden administration proposing to change the U.S. Census, adding Middle Eastern and North African categories. We could talk about identity politics and the census and all of these different categories coming up a little later on. Today, though, the news story that everybody is focused in on, and there's unfortunately a tremendous amount of anxiety and emotion and outrage that is growing, has to do with the imminent release. We're not exactly sure when it will be. It could actually happen during this program. Clay and I are both scanning to see when the video of the Tyre Nichols incident, body camera footage from these 5 police officers, is released. Clay, neither you nor I have seen it yet. It's expected it could come out at any moment. Here is a quote from the police chief in Memphis. We're going to see acts in the body cam that defy humanity. This was the Memphis's top cop warning about what the public response will likely be to this fatal traffic stop beating of Tyre Nichols. 5 officers involved. All officers involved are black. Tyre Nichols is black. And this was described by that top cop as, quote, worse than Rodney King. And there is now belief also that he was not even, as this wouldn't change, obviously, the gravity of the situation, but was not even driving recklessly when he was pulled over in the first place. The footage is going to be released today. Clay, Memphis and many other cities are bracing for riots.
Yeah, and let's play. I think we've got some audio here from the Memphis police chief actually saying what you just said, which they can't substantiate the reason why this individual, Tyre Nichols, was pulled over. I believe that's cut 1.
I'm going to be honest with you about the stop itself. What was said was that there was a witnessing of what was considered reckless driving. Mm-hmm. We've looked at cameras, we've looked at body-worn cameras, and even if something occurred prior to this stop, we've been unable to substantiate that. The information that we have right now, based on what we could observe, is the stop itself and the first officer exiting his vehicle, and you'll see that on the body-worn camera. And at that time, the officers were already, aggressive and amped up.
So that's the Memphis police chief, I believe, giving you her review of the facts and the data and the video in this situation. We also should get the mom of this individual, Tyre Nichols, who was murdered, get her audio, because she was on television this morning calling for peace and calm. Tyre Nichols, 29 years old, had a 4-year-old son. Again, what I don't understand about this, Buck, and I'm far from an expert on the release of highly sensitive video, but my understanding is they are releasing this right around 6 p.m. Memphis time. So I live in Nashville. That's just about time it's officially gotten fully dark in the state of Tennessee this time of year. And it's on a Friday when everybody, in theory, by and large, is back home after a long week. It doesn't make sense to me why they would choose to release this on a Friday evening headed into a weekend when people, I mean, think about it, like young kids, teenage kids, boys in particular, who tend to cause a lot of trouble. If you look at the data on who creates incidents, we've talked about this before, 16 to 24-year-old males. They're not in school. They don't have class to go to. Their school bus isn't coming to pick them up. I don't know why you wouldn't. And we were talking about this off air, Buck, and I'm curious how you would analyze this. It seems to me a miscalculation to release something like this going into the weekend when there is massive amounts of free time at night, when it's already more difficult for whoever is called in to try to make things safer no matter what the situation is. Why would you not release this at like 7 in the morning on a Wednesday, Buck? And maybe it's just me miscalculating, but it seems as if whatever protest would ensue would be far more likely to turn into a riot when it's in the dark on the weekend.
Yes, I think that maybe there's a bit of a holdover belief that bad news on a Friday is less likely to get as much attention, or perhaps allows people, you think people often get, I know that's a very separate issue, but they'll do layoffs on a Friday. The idea being people have the weekend to gather themselves and collect, traumatic news on a Friday. In this instance, I think holding the information and releasing it on a Friday is not a wise decision. Now, perhaps there won't be. This has been the case in other high-profile police violence-involved incidents where there was a preparation for a lot of riots that didn't happen. So this could be just like that. Hopefully, it will be entirely peaceful. And I have a theory on how that may be more likely to be the case. Here is, though, first, the Memphis DA, Steve Mulroy, who is calling for police reform, and he is saying the whole world is watching. Play clip 2.
We all want the same thing. We want justice for Tyre Nichols. It's my hope that if there is any silver lining to be drawn from this very dark cloud, it's that perhaps this incident can open a broader conversation about the need for police reform. The world is watching us, and we need to show the world what lessons we can learn from this tragedy.
I mean, the world is also watching, Clay, from the perspective of the response of the community based on everything. I mean, the chief of police wouldn't say this is gut-wrenching and awful if it was not obviously the case from the video. So I think we can safely assume, not having seen it ourselves, that this is going to be very, very difficult to watch and have a tremendous amount of emotional and psychological impact on people. I also, though, think it is very likely that there will be a universal condemnation of the police actions here, that there won't be some major political divide. This is not going to be an instance, I believe. Again, we haven't seen the video, and we're speaking to you with the knowledge that it could come out at any moment. But based on what we've been told, I would think it's likely that the right, the left, everybody is going to say this is awful. Police violence like this is completely unacceptable. They should face the fullest possible charges. And when that happens, why would there be riots? Right? I mean, I would be hopeful that if there's a universal sense that this was an injustice and this was egregious, that it would tamp down, that would calm at a certain level the destruction of neighborhoods and burning a building. Protest, absolutely. Marches, absolutely. But burning down the neighborhood grocery store or drugstore, there's obviously no justification for that. But also, when there's not some political conflict at the heart of this, I'm not sure that it will have quite the same, there will be quite the same response from the hard left.
Well, not only that, they've already charged all 5 officers with murder. Right. So I think that is something that, presuming the evidence justifies that, that was smart to have done. I genuinely wonder, and we talked about this yesterday, how much the race of the police officers involved is also going to change the anger on some level, because you can't, I'm sure there'll be an attempt to say this is a further example of white supremacy or whatever else. But for this situation in particular, 5 black Memphis cops being charged with murder of a 29-year-old black man, I think it takes away the argument, at least to me, that this is predominantly a race-based policing decision and that this is occurring because Tyre Nichols was black. In other words, it's hard to believe that this occurred specifically because this individual was black. And look, my concern, one, is for everybody who's done absolutely nothing wrong. There are tons of Memphis cops out there right now whose lives may well be in danger tonight and today because of the release of this video, who are busting their asses every day to try to make the city of Memphis safe. And it's not just Memphis, Buck. Tons of cops all over this country who are in cities and are apprehensive and nervous. Probably this morning at their meetings, they said, hey, guys, there's going to be a viral video coming out this evening, 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time in Memphis. It may impact things from New York to Los Angeles in terms of what happens in your cities tonight. Just be aware. All those people doing their jobs in danger. Buck, I think they've already called out the National Guard to try to prepare for this situation potentially, or the State Guard, or whatever you want to call it, in Memphis. A lot of other people being called in, I imagine, potentially for these reactions. And again, I just feel awful for all of those people out there who are going to put their lives in danger. And if you've got love, we should open up phone lines, by the way, because we've got the number one radio show in Memphis, 800-282-2882. I'm sure we have a massive listenership in Memphis that can give us a sense for what on the ground it feels like there. But, Buck, let me contextualize this, too, as someone who lives up the road in Nashville. It's been an awful year for Memphis. All-time record highs for murders. They had the Eliza Fletcher story, which went viral in, I believe, August or so, when a mom who was out for a jog was kidnapped by a felon who shouldn't have been on the streets and murdered. That was a gut-wrenching blow to the city. Almost within a couple of weeks, if I remember correctly, right after that, Buck, we talked about it on the show. Remember that guy who was Facebook videoing himself driving all around the city of Memphis, killing people randomly? That was, again, an awful, terrifying incident for many people in Memphis. I'm just wondering, if you are in Memphis right now, 800-282-2882, what are you seeing on the ground? And we'll play the mom calling for calm. I believe we have that when we come back. But also, I just am curious to hear from our listeners there. As I said, we have the number one show in Memphis. I'm curious what you guys are seeing and what you are expecting as things continue to progress, unfortunately, in that situation. So we'll continue to follow this throughout the show. It is the biggest story that is out there right now. Look, gotta tell you, shifting gears, when you decide to switch your cell phone service from one provider to another, you keep your same cell phone and you keep your same cell phone number. So what would make you want to switch? Well, how about saving money and also going with someone who shares your political values, because they want to do business with companies that share the same values as all of you listening out there right now. Pure Talk, veteran-owned business, proudly employs a U.S.-based customer service team, a company that purposely doesn't spend their marketing dollars with fake news networks, for instance. You're going to get fast data, talk, text for just $30 a month. Plus, Pure Talk has a first-month risk-free guarantee. Try it. If you're not completely happy with your Pure Talk service, you'll get your money back. Dial pound 250. Say Clay and Buck. You'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, dial pound 250. Say Clay and Buck. Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless. Welcome back in. Clay, Travis, Buck Sexton show. Going to be a couple of videos coming out. We haven't even been able to watch it yet, but the Paul Pelosi body cam video from San Francisco has just been released from a police officer. So we will watch that during the commercial break coming up and tell you what we are able to see on that video. That has been a major topic of conversation since October, a few weeks before the midterm elections when that attack on Paul Pelosi happened. But we are still reacting and discussing what is likely to be another calamitous moment in many cities across America, depending on exactly when this video is released. Again, the expectation is 6 Central, 7 Eastern. That would be 4 o'clock on the West Coast, that this video would come out later this evening of 5 black police officers beating to death a 29-year-old Tyre Nichols. Now, the hope is, and we're going to take some calls from Memphis because we want to hear what it's like in that city right now from all of you. The hope is that people are going to listen to Tyre Nichols, his mom, who had this to say about the fact that she wants there to be peaceful protest when this video comes out. Listen.
It's going to be horrific, but I want each and every one of you to protest in peace. I don't want us burning up our cities, tearing up the streets, because that's not what my son stood for.
Clay?
So hopefully people will listen on this. Buck, have you watched the Pelosi video?
I'm so sorry, but it just came up. I just saw this, and look, we have two incidents of tremendous news importance. Just want to first say the mother. It's such an honorable thing to do for her to say that everybody should protest peacefully. I'm sure she's absolutely devastated, and hearts and prayers go out to her. We also have the release of this Pelosi video, and it came up on my screen, Clay. It was sent to me right as we were playing that other clip. Paul Pelosi answers the door with DuPape. Paul Pelosi is standing there in like his boxers and a shirt with DuPape, and he kind of walks calmly to the door together. It looks weird. I that's all I can tell you is I'm looking at it right now, and there's this. Oh, and then the fight. Oh, it happens right there. And then he hits him. The cops come in. So the answering of the door is, now I haven't been able to listen to the audio because obviously, we're on air live, but you're going to have to watch it. I'll send it to you in a second. I can tell you that somehow Paul Pelosi answers the door very calmly. This individual, DuPape, is next to him. There's an exchange of words. They're side by side, and DuPape they're kind of like grappling over this hammer. But Paul Pelosi does not run to the police like, oh my God, there's a maniac in my house. That I can tell you from the video.
Or sprint outside. And again, they fired someone for saying that Pelosi opened the door. And remember, that was the report that came out from the Today Show, from NBC News, if I remember correctly.
Paul Pelosi is standing and calmly opens the door and is speaking to the officers, and this guy is next to him, and this guy is you have to watch the video to see. It's hard. Now, he does viciously attack him, and it happens quickly. We're going to break down more of this and come back. We've got to listen to this audio, but this video just came out a moment ago, the Paul Pelosi attack. We'll tell you more about it. Stay with us. If your business has 5 or more employees and you manage to survive COVID, you could be eligible to receive a payroll tax rebate of up to $26,000 per employee. This isn't a loan. There's no payback. It's a refund of your taxes. So how do you get your business this refund money? Go to getrefunds.com. Their tax attorneys are specialists in this little-known payroll tax refund program. They do all the work with no charge up front and simply share a percentage of the cash they get for you. Businesses of all types can qualify, including those who took PPP, nonprofits, even those that had an increase in sales. The team at getrefunds.com has already returned over $1 billion to businesses. They can help you as well. Go to getrefunds.com, click on Qualify Me, and answer a few questions. Payroll tax refunds only available for a limited amount of time, so don't miss out. Act now. Go to getrefunds.com. That's getrefunds.com. No risk, high reward with getrefunds.com. Welcome back to Clay and Buck. The video of the Paul Pelosi attack is out. Clay and I have watched it over many times now, just as this news is breaking. I want to also remind you that the Tyre Nichols body cam footage will be released later today, probably after the show today is over. So if that changes, we'll bring you that breaking news and our analysis of it. But for right now, we do have the video of the Paul Pelosi attack. I just would preface this with, it is obvious from the attack that it was, a vicious assault on Paul Pelosi by this clearly deranged person. Paul Pelosi is an elderly man, and he didn't deserve this. No person would deserve what happened to him at all. And glad to hear that he is making a solid recovery and he's going to be okay. There's no making light of the violence against Paul Pelosi here. That's not what this is about. This is about getting the facts of the case correctly and we're all happy that Paul Pelosi is fine. And it's hard to watch when you watch the video. You realize this guy, he's in his late 70s, right, Clay? I mean, this is like grandparents' age, and he's attacked by this maniac. With all of that said, and I think that needed to be said, I got some questions. I have some questions. First of all, Miguel Almaguer was suspended by NBC News for accurately describing what happened. Clay and I, remember, we talked about this yesterday, Clay. We said, what's going to happen here? You think they're even going to apologize to him? They suspended a reporter for the reportage of fact. And they did it because it raised any question about the incident, and they had a political narrative, which is Republican. This guy, by the way, the notion of this like lunatic nudist hippie who's living in a broken down bus selling weed all the time and wandering around and saying he's Jesus Christ, that this is some kind of a right-wing hit or something, was completely insane. And NBC and the rest of them all went along with it. So let's just start with, they owe reporter Miguel Almaguer a big apology, as we thought they would. He was right. What he said happened. How do we know? Clay, Paul Pelosi answers the door in his boxer shorts and like a nightshirt, calmly. The police officers are in no rush when they get there. The police officers knock. They're kind of like, hey, are we even in the right place? Paul Pelosi calmly walks the door, calmly answers the door, and they're just kind of having a, hey, guys, everybody okay here thing? And Paul Pelosi has a drink with ice cubes in it in his left hand during this whole exchange. And then it just sort of escalates. The maniac swings a hammer at him. What does this tell us?
Yeah, to me, what stands out the most is when Paul Pelosi opens the door. Now, Paul Pelosi is 82 years old. He's just looking up his age, about to turn 83 in April. So I think you factor that in on some level. But we'll play you the report from the Today Show that got the reporter suspended when we come back in this next segment, because I think we can hear, and now that we've seen the video ourselves, we can assess the accuracy of that report, which was considered unacceptable, and NBC fired him or suspended him over it. Now, what I have said from the get-go, when we first heard his report, I think if you went back and listened to our show, Buck, I said for most people out there, if there was an attacker who had entered into your home and put you in peril of your life, and the police arrived and opened the door, you would immediately rush outside and get behind the police. Now, this guy is standing right beside him holding a hammer. It's hard to tell from the video to me, Buck, whether he actually has physical, like whether he's holding Pelosi's arm when that door is open. Pelosi definitely has a drink in his hand, it appears, which is also significant here. But the cops basically open the door and say, hey, what's going on, guys? And then in a fraction of a second, if you watch this video, and you can go check it out, both of us have shared it at Clay Travis, at Buck Sexton for yourself on Twitter. You can go search out our accounts and go watch this video for yourself. Buck, when you see it, is how quickly it turns. The attack kind of comes out of nowhere, in other words. It's not as if there's a great deal of anger apparent and then suddenly, a minute passes or something, and then there's an attack. There's no screaming at. It just goes directly to the hammer attack really quickly. But I think the question I have is, if there's an assailant in your home, the police arrive at your home, and you have an opportunity to rush outside behind the police, that's the one thing here that does not add up to me.
Clay,
I think we definitely need more here.
If someone broke into my home at, what was this, 2 o'clock in the morning or something, right? It was
middle of the night's a report.
Middle of the night. Someone breaks into my home in the middle of the night. I have never met this person and don't know this person. Let's assume that that's part of it. And they're clearly, you look at this guy, you can tell this guy he's not all there, right? It is very obvious from just his body language and in the video what happens. If the guy was walking around for months saying he thought he was Jesus and crazy things. He's a lunatic, okay? A lunatic breaks into your home in the middle of the night. You and I are both thinking, am I going to have to kill this person to defend myself and my family or those around me? Like that's your thought process. How do I get away from this person as quickly as possible? My life is in jeopardy. To me, there are two possibilities here that would make some degree of sense based on the video that we've seen. The first would be this guy broke in. It's late at night. Paul Pelosi is, he's 82 years old. He's really out of it. And he kind of just starts, like, they actually start talking. And there's maybe he's trying to de-escalate. Maybe he's really scared, but he's trying to de-escalate. Maybe he even offers the guy a drink. And I'm just extrapolating here. Maybe offers the guy a drink and says, hey, we can talk this out. But it also, he called the cops, right?
Yeah, the reports are, and again, I'm remembering based on prior, I think we had 911 call that was released prior. I feel like Pelosi went into the bathroom at some point and made a call asking for police to come. But you can tell by the way the police arrive, it was not a call that suggested, hey, someone's trying to kill me. It was, hey, there's somebody here who's not supposed to be here. Can you come? It was like a wellness check almost kind of call.
So that's the one option that I laid out. I think that is feasible. I'm not saying that happened. I'm saying that would be feasible based on now having seen the video. The other option is that he knew this guy in some capacity. I don't know what. Maybe just from the neighborhood or whatever. I don't know. We don't have data. We don't have facts. We don't have evidence to prove that. But that would then, at some level, indicate why he wouldn't be terrified. I mean, I think everyone listening to this knows, Clay, crazy person breaks into your house in the middle of the night, wakes you up and has a hammer. You are terrified. You are thinking, am I going to have to kill this person or is he going to try to kill me? You're not answering the door in your boxer shorts with a drink in your hand saying, yeah, everything's okay, which is what happens in this video, right? I mean, that's just not what you would expect from the situation. So clearly they didn't want this video released before because it doesn't look like what they were telling us it was right before people cast their votes in the election.
Yeah, that's right. And we're going to play the report from the Today Show. And again, we got lots of breaking news here. We'll also see if we can track down the 911 call to try to piece this all together. But to me, and this is, look, you always have to kind of think as if you're a defense attorney. I've been a defense attorney before in my career. My argument here is that this was some sort of, to try to the hammer attack happened, right? So the evidence is Paul Pelosi was clearly attacked.
And it was vicious and brutal and awful. We can see it.
And that's a clear crime. But why did Paul Pelosi not immediately rush outside when the police officers arrived? I think that's the difficult question, and that's why I think they didn't want this body cam footage released, because it raises questions beyond, oh, this was a crazy Trump-supporting MAGA attacker who just stormed into Paul Pelosi's home and beat him senseless with a hammer while screaming, this is, I'm just making it up, right? But while screaming, this is for the insurrection of January 6th, which was the story that they tried to basically sell. It's a little bit stranger. And I would be curious what the police thought, because you can hear the conversation from the police as they approach. They aren't sprinting. They aren't running as if Paul Pelosi has conveyed, hey, my life is in immediate peril. You have to get here instantly.
Clay, I've had cops show up at house parties I was in college with more urgency than these cops walk up to that door, right, for a noise complaint.
And I think that's part of what that was conveyed to them as they approach was not this is, hey, someone's life is in peril. The way that they arrived, and even the way Paul Pelosi opens the door while having the drink in his hand, it's almost like a cordial, hey, officers, how are you doing? That rapidly then escalates into an attack. So we'll continue to provide more context for this, but two big stories involving police body cams, both coming out on this Friday. The one in Memphis reportedly coming out this evening. We got several callers from Memphis who want to weigh in with what it feels like on the streets of Memphis right now. And we will continue to piece together all this audio and story surrounding Paul Pelosi as well. You can also go to clayandbuck.com. The video is up there. If you're not a Twitter person, at Clay Travis, at Buck Sexton. Video is out there of Paul Pelosi if you want to watch it for yourself. We'll also take calls from you guys, maybe police officers out there seeing this video and reacting to the Paul Pelosi video. What did they think? All that, 800-282-2882. It is a Friday. Lots of breaking news. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. And I want to tell you as we roll into the break here, how many of you out there have moments in your family's life that you want to preserve forever? Maybe it's on slides. Maybe it's on old school movie reels. Maybe it's VHS tapes that are slowly declining. Everybody has a family historian. How many of you out there right now have boxes of videos that are incredibly important to you? Maybe you don't even have a VCR anymore, but you want to preserve the memories that are stored there forever for you and your family. Well, fortunately, Legacy Box is here for you. You know, Legacy Box probably has more VCRs than anyone or any business on the planet right now. They keep buying up VCRs so they can make sure they preserve your family's memories. They're located down in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is where my mom grew up. They are a Tennessee-based corporation. They do a phenomenal job. They've taken care of both Buck and myself and our family memories. They can do it for you, too. They'll digitize 19 different types of old media, and they'll turn it into something that is on the cloud, digitally preserved forever. If you want a thumb drive, they'll do that. They can even make DVDs if you would rather have this preserved on a DVD. It's easy. You should get started with Legacy Box today to preserve your family's legacy. You'll be joining 1.5 million families who've relied on Legacy Box over the last decade. Visit legacybox.com/Clay to get a great discount over their regular prices. legacybox.com/Clay. Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. We'll play the Paul Pelosi 911 audio for you in the beginning of the next hour to kind of further contextualize the release of the video and the circumstances surrounding the attack by this DuPape individual with the hammer. But it is important to recognize this gentleman, let me make sure I get his name right, Miguel Almaguer, for NBC News. Some of you will remember because we played this audio for you months ago on the show. He reported that sources had told him that Paul Pelosi opened the door when police arrived, and that was considered to be unacceptable. He was actually suspended for the report. Let's listen to Almaguer's report. When was this, by the way? This was not very long after the incident, within a week or two, and he was suspended for this. Now that the video is out, let's hear and recognize and analyze his reporting on that incident. Here it is.
Sources familiar with what unfolded in the Pelosi residence now revealing when officers responded to the high-priority call, they were seemingly unaware they'd been called to the home of the Speaker of the House. After a knock and announce, the front door was opened by Mr. Pelosi. The 82-year-old did not immediately declare an emergency or try to leave his home, but instead began walking several feet back into the foyer toward the assailant and away from police.
Okay. So, Buck, my reaction to that is, and again, the only thing I would say is walking back, and maybe we need to watch the video more carefully. I didn't get the sense that Pelosi walked backwards. Everything else that he reported was 100% accurate.
Yes.
In that report.
And that's
the
a
fact
pretty
that he opened
minor,
the door.
The details he gave of calmly answering the door, and people keep saying open or if you walk up to the door and you're not shouting, "Oh my God, there's a maniac in my house," people are going to have questions under the circumstances. So let's not get too into was it his hand or the cop's hand? What point is, he walked up to the door, and if this guy doesn't swing the hammer at him, it's not even clear the cops were going to do anything. Do you know what I mean?
That's right. He didn't scream, "Oh my God, there's an intruder in my house. Can you please save me?" He didn't sprint outside the door and get behind the police officers, as I think many people would do. Now, you can argue that somehow, and he appears to have a drink in his hand, which had not been reported before. And again, if you fear for your life, maybe Paul Pelosi is the calmest, most rational person on the planet, And when someone with a hammer broke into his house, he was like, hey, let's have a drink. Why are you in such a, feverish mood here? And maybe that's what Paul Pelosi did. But Paul Pelosi does not seem to have believed he was in extreme peril. Now, we don't know exactly what they talked about. Maybe Pelosi correctly diagnosed this guy as just being crazy, but didn't feel like there was that much danger associated with it. I do believe Fox News has now got the video of a camera showing him breaking into the house with that hammer. Supposedly, again, I saw the headline on Twitter as we were in a commercial break, trying to keep tabs on all this. When we come back, we will play you the 911 call. We'll also allow you, again, you can watch it at clayandbuck.com. Outkick.com's got it. You can watch it on the Clay Travis Buck Sexton Twitter feed. We have shared the video. You can get your own opinion. You can watch it multiple times. We'll open up phone lines, allow you guys to react. But again, that report in substance, when you consider how often the media gets many things wrong, are you watching the video again? The only thing I think you could point to and say is, did he take a couple of steps back into the foyer? I think that's hard to see based on this video. Otherwise, everything seems to have been basically true that he reported. Certainly not worthy, I wouldn't think, Buck, of a suspension. And can you imagine if he had reported that he also opened the door with a drink in his hand? Fox News now is showing video of the break-in at the home by DuPape. So, again, this is a messy story. I think the release of the police body camera, something that should have happened a long time ago, because it would have tamped down on a lot of speculation surrounding this story. It allows everybody to watch it for themselves. The biggest takeaway is certainly this is an assault, and there's no way to claim that it is not an assault.
Yeah. And this had nothing to do with MAGA or the right or Trump or any of the stuff that they tried to tie to this. This guy's a lunatic.
Welcome in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Wild breaking news Friday. For those of you just gotten in your cars, they have officially released the Paul Pelosi video of the police officers that night. There also is video obtained by Fox News showing this guy, DuPape, breaking into Paul Pelosi's home with his hammer. You can go watch these videos on our Twitter accounts at Clay Travis, at Buck Sexton. You can go to clayandbuck.com. You can go to outkick.com. You can basically go anywhere on the planet right now and see this video for yourself of this attack that happened in October before the election. Now, the biggest takeaway, I would say, of this video is that Paul Pelosi clearly attacked. Also, that this guy is clearly insane, and the entire process feels quite strange. But let's play so that's one story. The other story that is potentially going to lead to violence tonight is in the city of Memphis. They are planning on releasing a video of 5 black police officers essentially beating to death Tyre Nichols' 29-year-old Memphis dad. We played audio for you earlier of the Memphis police chief essentially saying there does not appear to have been any reason why this individual was stopped in the first place. In other words, that he was not committing any crime. All 5 Memphis police officers have been charged with second-degree murder already. That video is going to be released at 6 o'clock Central local time in Memphis, 7 Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. Hopefully, there will not be violence that ensues. There is a great deal of fear, particularly in Memphis, however, that violence may ensue. So we will play some of the comments. Neither of us have seen this video from Memphis, from the police officers. We have all seen this video, so 2 different news stories going on of Paul Pelosi, husband of Nancy Pelosi, being attacked. And so he opens the door, and that was an earlier report that had come out from the Today Show. Now, let's play. I believe we have the 911 call, which we can now pair with the overall reaction when he opens the door for the police. Let's play that Paul Pelosi 911 call, which was the reason why police were dispatched to his home.
Oh, I guess I called by mistake. What is this?
This is San Francisco Police. Do you need help?
Oh, well, there's a gentleman here just waiting for my wife to come back, Nancy Pelosi. He's just waiting for her to come back, because she's not going to be here for a day, so I guess we'll have to wait.
Okay, do you need police, fire, or medical for anything?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Is the Capitol Police around?
No, this is San
They usually
Francisco.
protect my wife. They're usually here at the house protecting my wife.
No, this is San Francisco Police.
I understand. Okay, well,
Okay, so look, again, the facts that we have, Clay. The guy broke in. The guy is a lunatic, and he, viciously almost killed Paul Pelosi with a hammer right in front of cops. That is beyond dispute. Those are the facts. That's all very clear. And it's an awful thing that happened to Paul Pelosi. So we can all agree on that. The only things that just, I think, threw people off about this would be, one, just in getting the timeline or the facts all straight in the beginning. The guy must have come across, meaning DuPape, in the beginning. And if someone breaks into my house with a hammer, I'm thinking, can I get to my firearm? Paul Pelosi, it seems,
or
they must
if
have been...
you're locking yourself in the bathroom, calling police and refusing to come back out. It feels like Paul Pelosi felt like he could just talk this guy off the ledge. He was mentally disturbed and uncomfortable, and he felt almost not as much threatened as it was like, you're just a crazy man, like he just needs help almost. Does that make sense?
Yes. And this is why, again, I still think, maybe he had, look, I know San Francisco's a big place, a big city. I don't know. He might have seen the guy in the neighborhood or something. When I say he had some, sense of who this individual could have been or may have been, because he's very calm.
Yes.
For someone who is not really able to defend himself. He's 82 years old, and he's got a lunatic who's broken into his house in the middle of the night. He's on the phone with the police, and I mean he's calling it in like it's a noise complaint or something. I mean, it's just there's no sense of urgency, and I guess maybe Paul Pelosi just had no idea the jeopardy that he was in. And so he just figured this guy is kind of sad.
Crazy. All of this is just weird, Buck, because I go back to your point. The law has a standard, the reasonable man standard, right? So if you take away the fact that this is Paul Pelosi, for everybody out there who is listening, if someone with a hammer breaks into your home in the middle of the night and wakes you up in bed while holding a hammer and says he wants your wife when she returns.
Yes.
That he wants to, talk with her while holding a hammer. First of all, Buck, this is like everyone's worst nightmare is you wake up in bed with a stranger holding a weapon like in your home. This is what people have wake up in the middle of the night in cold sweats thinking of. And I just come back to when the police, so first of all, he didn't say send the police. So maybe he's trying to not tip off the guy. The reports are that he was making that call from the bathroom. Maybe he's trying to not tip off the guy that he wants police there. And he's saying, hey, usually the Capitol Police, he mentions his wife's name, and at least registered with the 911 operator that she did send the police there. But the whole thing is strange. He didn't immediately rush out the door. And the police didn't seem to be arriving with the idea of, hey, we've got a break-in. We've got a potential deadly situation ongoing. It certainly didn't answer like it was a hostage situation. So the whole thing is just strange. And I can see, at least for purposes of the narrative, this is a guy who was a huge Trump supporter and decided he had to kill Nancy Pelosi. Like, when you watch the video, what comes across is just, this is a crazy man, and we're glad that Paul Pelosi survived the attack, but it doesn't feel particularly like this was some assassin hit job by a person of sound mind in any way. A crazy man shows up in the house with a hammer.
I mean, when you look at I pulled up the crime statistics for San Francisco, and I just bring this up because I do think that there had been I know that there had been an effort in San Francisco. There were columns written about this where they would say, don't call the police just because someone's breaking into your home to steal your car from the garage or to steal your bicycle. There's so much day-to-day crime. Now, San Francisco doesn't have a lot of violent crime, doesn't have a lot of homicides comparatively to other cities. It has a tremendous amount per capita of burglary and theft, of property crimes. Property crime in San Francisco is off the charts. I'm trying to look at the data for last year. You had 35,000 reported larcenies. 35,000. There's only 365 days in a year. You have a tremendous amount. You have 7,300 burglaries. 7,300 burglaries in that one city. That's people breaking into homes, right? We know what a burglar is, or breaking into a business and stealing. So maybe Paul Pelosi just, was of the mindset, it's somebody, he's disturbed. He just wants to get some money or something, and I'll call the cops. And he went into a de-escalation mode because the sentiment in San Fran in general with a lot of people is they just want to take my stuff. They don't want to hurt me. Again, putting out what I think is a plausible explanation.
It's also possible, Buck, that he had taken an Ambien. Or maybe he had alcohol to drink really that night, and so he's not necessarily in 100% sound mind. I've never taken an Ambien, but I understand that a lot of people out there who take a sleeping aid, like your brain is not necessarily functioning 100% when you get woken up on an Ambien. We know that he had a DUI not too long ago. He had a drink in his hand. Maybe he is someone who drinks before he goes to bed. Maybe he went to bed a little bit drunk. Maybe that could impact the way he reacts as well, because anybody who's ever had a few drinks and you wake up in the middle of the night and something abnormal is happening, you don't necessarily react the way you would if you were of completely sound mind. What we know happened, based on all the evidence that has basically come down while we're on the air, the video of DePape breaking into the home is up. They're playing it on Fox News. We've shared that. And the video of Paul Pelosi answering the door. We played you the 911 call, which we had previously had. All of these things combined mean that we have a pretty clear picture of what is admittedly a strange interaction across the board. And what we don't know necessarily is, again, the reasonable man standard. Paul Pelosi doesn't seem to have behaved like most people would if an armed intruder arrived in their home in the middle of the night. Right. There are probably lots of reasons. Maybe he's super calm, Buck, and he legitimately thought, I can talk this guy off the ledge, and that's what he's trying to do. That seems maybe the most plausible opportunity here.
Paul Pelosi's reputation from people who know him in D.C. and in political circles is he's a kindly old man. So, this is not a guy who at 82 years old at this time in the middle of the night, you would expect to leap into action. And look, it's a lot easier to look at these things when you're not the one, it's not your home. And, obviously this guy is younger, able to physically overpower him. There's real fear there. The answering of the door, I just have to think Pelosi's either really out of it or he was in de-escalation mode and thought, I'm like seconds away from being safe here. I'm just going to play it cool. And then unfortunately things got, really, really ugly and really, really awful right on video. And you can see that. I think another part of this, though, because now there's going to be all this, there were all these conspiracy theories about this. Well, hold on a second. There were questions because there were competing stories from law enforcement about the body camera footage, meaning that there were different law enforcement agencies had initially said different things about the answering of the door and all the rest of it. I think Capitol Police and San Francisco Police had different stories. Now we have the evidence, or we have the facts, so we can clear that up. But there was this immediate effort to convince the public right before an election that an illegal immigrant nudist, lunatic living in San Francisco was somehow emblematic of like the Trump movement and the Trump movement's violence. And they tried to make this about MAGA and the right wing. And I don't care what Google searches this guy did. He's clearly deranged. And so it was just it was an underhanded cheap shot that they were trying to use to move the needle in their favor when the polls were going really badly for them right before. The Democrats were the ones who initially moved to politicize this in the most obvious ways. And so then people were asking questions about all of it because that's what's going to happen when you try to turn this into a political story.
And the question that I would ask is, why couldn't these videos have been released months ago? If you have video of the guy breaking into the home, and if you have police body camera video, thankfully, immediately from this incident, why would you not have put all of this out immediately and allowed the story to truly be seen by everyone, right? And I would say the same thing. This is why, in general, I think police body cam footage makes a lot of sense because it's effectively an eyewitness version of what the officers are seeing in real time. And it can, obviously with Memphis, it's going to indict these officers, but it can also protect officers when they are doing what they should be doing. But it also just allows the public to see all of this footage themselves and be able to know what exactly went on with these incidents. Now, the Paul Pelosi story, I predict now that all this is out, Buck, I predict it's over and gone, right? Like the guy's going to be convicted. He clearly attacks him with a hammer. There is no uncertainty. There's no real strong defense of this individual based on the fact that there's a video of him breaking in and there's a video of him attacking. So this story is basically open and shut. Now the story is going to pivot, I think, really quickly.
Yeah, but there is. We just want to play it for you, just because we have more facts, more data. We want to bring it all together for you. There is a second part of that 911 call. We'll play that, and then we do have Kim Strassel joining us to talk about. She's Wall Street Journal editorial board and columnist, and she's going to join us about we don't want to ban your gas stoves. No, they actually do. They actually do. Don't let them get away with this just because the left looks foolish on that. We'll come to that in just a few minutes. But there are responsibilities, as you know, that come with gun ownership. One of them is making sure your skills are sharp, that you're trained up, that you can use your weapon effectively. Now, that generally had meant going to your favorite gun range, indoor, outdoor, whatever. But bullets, ammo, it's really expensive these days, as you know. There's a new all-electronic way to train, and it's one you can do easily at home. It's a device that you put on your gun and attaches just like a weapon light. It's called the Mantis X. This device connects by Bluetooth to an app on your phone, which gives you real-time data on just how accurate your shooting is, trigger pull, things like that. This training method is called the dry fire practice. That's what Mantis X is, a firearms training system that is a no-ammo, all-electronic way to improve your shooting accuracy. You get feedback on your technique and drills and courses to work through. You have a whole lot of fun with this, trust me, and you'll improve your accuracy. Nearly everyone who uses this, about 94%, improves their shooting technique within about 20 minutes of using Mantis X. Start improving your shooting accuracy today. Get yours at MantisX.com. You'll be joining members of our armed forces, for example, who use this system to hone their skills. So trust me, this is going to help you. MantisX.com. For all the shooters out there, you got to get one. Mantis, MantisX.com. Welcome back to the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show. We've been talking about this video of the vicious attack, almost lethal attack on Paul Pelosi. And now we have far more information and context for it. Here's the second part of the phone call, the 911 call that Paul Pelosi made during the attack, or during that incident. Play it.
And what do you think? Think everything's good? He thinks everything's good. I've got a problem, but he thinks everything's good.
Okay. Call us back if you change your mind.
No. This gentleman just came into the house, and he wants to wait here for my wife to come home. And so, anyway, he told me to put the phone down.
Do you know who the person is?
No, I don't know who he is. He has this. He's telling me not to. He's telling me not to do anything.
What is your address, sir?
26.
What is your name?
My name is Paul Pelosi. Anyway, this gentleman says that he thinks everything ought to, he told me to put the phone down and just do what he said. Okay?
Okay, what's the gentleman's name?
I don't know. What's that? My name's David. The name is David.
Okay, and who is David?
I don't know. What's that?
I'm a friend of theirs.
Yeah, he says he's a friend, but as I say, I've never.
But you don't know who he is?
No, ma'am.
So I mean, look, I think he was trying to de-escalate. It's a very strange situation.
No doubt. Very weird. We'll continue to break this down with you as we await as well the ongoing story here in Memphis, which could be very dangerous for many of you out there. But I want to tell you, being prepared should be rewarded. If you're one of a mindset to prepare for what's going on out there, would you have ever believed that we were not going to have the ability to go get baby formula, or that we were going to run out of all sorts of products in the grocery stores? How about what's going on with just supply chains in general? You have health insurance, you have home insurance, you got car insurance. Why not food insurance? 3-month emergency food kit from mypatriotsupply.com. Do what I did. Save $200 on your 3-month emergency food kit. Kits are in stock. They'll ship fast and free. They arrive in unmarked boxes for your safety and privacy. Go to mypatriotsupply.com. That's mypatriotsupply.com. Welcome back in. Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. Friday edition. Lots of news breaking all over the country. Video of Paul Pelosi and the attack there coming out. Expecting at 6 p.m. Central, 7 on the East Coast, 4 Pacific for video of this Memphis police beating that ended in a death, the Tyre Nichols case, to come out, which could create all sorts of issues. Joined now by Kim Strassel of the Wall Street Journal. She's a columnist there. My favorite newspaper by far. In fact, I'm an old man. I get the print copy every single day. It's sitting next to me in my Las Vegas studio right now. Kim, appreciate all the work. There's obviously major breaking news going on there. You talk about the news of the day. Have you seen the Pelosi video? It's released. Do you have any reaction to that?
Yeah, so first of all, it's so great to be here. Thanks for having me on. I have seen it. And my first reaction is I think we're going to see a lot of people who are going to be very critical about the fact that the police did not maybe intervene faster here. But it's tough because you're looking at this in retrospect. We now know what this perpetrator was doing, what his intentions were, but that wasn't necessarily the case as they walked in. So there's going to be a lot of debate over this and a lot of debate about just the circumstances of that whole event. But it's one more piece of information.
Kim, we also had you on today because you've written this piece on the effort to ban gas stoves, which this is something that got a lot of attention. And then it flickered, it disappeared rapidly because they started to say that this wasn't really a thing and that the right was making it a thing. But you've dove into this a bit and looked at the actual campaign to ban gas stoves. It is a real thing. They push it with junk science. They do want to do it. Tell everybody what this campaign's all about. Who's behind it?
Yeah, the nonsense out of the White House that there's no intention to do this or that this is made up, that is baloney. There's a very coordinated and calculated and very well-funded effort to kill off all gas appliances. It's led by a number of climate activist groups, and that's really important to remember because you're hearing a lot about health claims, how gas stoves are supposedly bad for your health. No, these groups understood years ago that trying to get Americans to get rid of gas stoves would be very hard if it was in the name of climate. So groups like you have like the Climate Imperative Foundation, the Rocky Mountain Institute, Rewiring America, New York University's Institute for Policy Integrity. They started pumping out all this hokey science claiming that somehow stoves were bad for you. And that has now been adopted wholeheartedly by members of the Biden administration. Just last month in December, the administration held a high-profile summit called the Electrification Summit. It featured an entire panel on getting gas out of homes. All of the members on that panel sat and just recited these crazy health claims as if they were accepted fact and talked about the need to get rid of all combustion appliances in your house. So, this is central to their entire climate agenda, and it's not a question of if they're going to do it, it's a question of when.
Kim, when you look, so there's so many things going on right now. I know the Wall Street Journal has been covering the RNC and who's going to end up being the head of the RNC, and also how that could potentially implicate 2024. How wild and crazy do you think the 2024 election is going to be? Do you think it's going to be Biden without too many challengers? Do you think it's going to be pretty much Trump versus DeSantis? Or how do you see this all shaking out? Obviously, as we sit here early in 2023, it feels like anything can happen. We thought Trump was going to get charged until all the classified document scandal. So who knows what else might happen. But as we're sitting here at the end of January, how would you assess this battleground going forward?
Yeah, it is going to be absolutely crazy. I am one of those who believe that even if Biden announces that he's still going to get a challenger, okay, everything else about him has been Jimmy Carter, and so why not that too? I just find it very hard to believe that the younger generation of his party is going to sit by and let a guy whose infirmities are so on display clear the field, especially when there's so many of them who are eager to get in themselves. On the Republican side, I know that there is an effort going on in Washington, a lot of discussion for those who would like to see new blood in the party. And I don't think this is necessarily a comment on Trump himself, but there is a desire to have a new person out there. And for those who are interested in that, there's been a lot of talk about potentially trying to clear the field other than Trump and DeSantis. In order to make it harder for Trump to basically outmaneuver what would be a very crowded field. I myself do hope we get a number of people in there, not because I don't think DeSantis is a really interesting candidate and great, but because this is a really big moment for the conservative movement, and they need to see a lot of different voices and have that debate and choose very wisely because it's going to be very important to get a conservative back into the White House.
You know, Kim, you mentioned the new generation and the Republican Party and the dynamics at play for the presidency. But today, as you know, RNC is voting over RNC chair. You have Ronna McDaniel, who was initially elevated into the post by Donald Trump. Harmeet Dillon, who is a lawyer, also does a lot of Fox News appearances, known to the base, known to the party well, who's running against her. I believe Mike Lindell is also... Isn't he on the ballot? Yes, Mike Lindell. But so what do you see with this dynamic playing out here?
Yeah, so without kind of getting into the personalities, I think this has been a really healthy discussion for the RNC to have. Just because a lot of it isn't necessarily about personality, it's about the role of the outfit. What it did or didn't do in the last midterm as a result of this fight. We're kind of having an autopsy about the RNC's position and how it played into some of the failures that Republicans saw. This comes as well, which I find fascinating, at a moment when everyone's beginning to rethink the idea of these giant party structures anyway. What are they supposed to do? Especially in this day and age when so much money that pours into campaigns is coming from these outside PACs. And they are really exerting a lot of the influence here. So one of the discussions, and I think it's just so important, has been the role of the RNC of inviting new people into the party, of outreaching to new audiences. I think that is something that it's been getting better at. And you have seen that in terms of some of the voting demographic shifts in recent elections, in particular Hispanics voting in greater numbers for Republicans, African Americans. I think those discussions are really important to have. And so in my mind, I'm kind of hopeful whoever comes out on top of this these days, I think that debate internally is going to make the RNC stronger going forward.
Kim Strassel, go check out her columns at the Wall Street Journal. Kim, always appreciate you being with us. Come back soon.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
The fight to protect the lives of unborn children is as active as ever. In half the states in our nation, we're hearing and reading about new legislation proposing newer laws for abortion, abortion pills, and more. What you might not have heard about, however, is the work of the preborn pregnancy clinics nationwide. This nonprofit organization has been saving the lives of unborn children for the past 17 years. On any given day, they save the lives of 150 babies, just to give you a sense of their daily impact. They need our help, though. They're funded by donations from the pro-life community. They use those donations to provide ultrasounds to pregnant mothers and care up through 2 years of the baby's life. Through an ultrasound, though, during those ultrasound moments, a mother considering abortion hears the heartbeat of that baby, sees that precious life, and a majority of the time, just because of that preborn ultrasound, she chooses life for her child. Will you join the fight to save lives today? Please consider making a donation of whatever size you can. But just for reference, $28 is all it takes for an ultrasound that could save a baby's life. $140 would be 5 ultrasounds sponsored by you. 100% of your donation will go towards saving babies' lives. Just dial pound 250, say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, say baby, or visit their website at preborn.com/buck. That's preborn.com/BUCK, sponsored by Preborn. Welcome back to Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show. A lot of news breaking today. A lot of new information has come to light and will come to light on some very important stories. First off, we had the release of the Paul Pelosi assault video, so we now know more about that attack and what happened there. We also are expecting later on today there will be the release of body camera footage from this 5 police officers involved in the alleged murder of Tyre Nichols. That's supposed to come out, that body camera footage, which we have all been told is very troubling, gut-wrenching to watch by authorities, including the chief of Memphis Police. They have been telling us this for days. Clay, I do think, though, as there are cities preparing for the possibility of riots, and hopefully there'll be no riots. Hopefully there'll be peaceful protests and vigils and a forceful but peaceful conversation about what could have been done differently here in terms of perhaps de-escalation training, police procedures, whatever reforms might be offered up. I mean, I also think it is always necessary to remember in any of these instances, we, for example, if we're in a war, if the United States is at war, in any war there will be some soldiers who end up violating Geneva Convention and UCMJ and doing something that's criminal, perhaps killing civilians, whatever the circumstance may be. And we understand that that's not reflective of the entire military. That is some individuals who broke their oaths to their country and dishonored themselves in their service. That's just those people that are involved in that. That's not the service. That's not the military. And on the law enforcement side, I think that's important to keep in perspective, too, that cops will tell you this, too. There are few things in the world that upset police officers more than perps in uniform, is what they call them. Police officers who, whether they're running drugs themselves under the, with the badge as a shield, or they're involved in a manslaughter incident, a murder incident like this, they understand that makes their job more difficult, puts them at greater risk, and also just undermines the entire institution, and a very, very necessary one, as we've learned, unfortunately, in recent years. If you undermine cops, you make everybody less safe. So I think that we'll see some of these dynamics playing out in the hours ahead. I know we'll see them playing out. I hope they play out peacefully and with respect for law. I do think that the decision to release this on a Friday after days of telling us this is going to be awful is very poor decision-making on the part of Memphis authorities. I don't understand that.
I agree. That's what I said in the open of the show. They have decided, and we're going to take your calls, by the way. We got a lot of Memphis calls who wanted to tell us what things were like in the city and what your expectations are. I want to ask you guys to call back in, because then immediately the Paul Pelosi tape being released broke, so we didn't get to those calls. 800-282-2882. But, Buck, you just heard me during one of the commercial breaks. I mean, I live in Nashville. I'm out in Las Vegas right now with a couple of my youngest kids. But I told my wife, hey, just get to the house. Don't be out in downtown Nashville. She's finishing law school, my wife is, and sometimes stays late at the Vanderbilt University to do her reading. And what I'm telling her is what I would encourage a lot of you to do. I don't know what the reaction is going to be. I live in the state of Tennessee. I would be very nervous if I lived in Memphis. I'm nervous about even Nashville just up the road because of what happened during the George Floyd protest and how violent and dangerous it became. If you got kids, you got grandkids, I don't know that tonight is a great night for them to be out in any city. I'm telling you, if I would be telling my own kids that, Buck heard me during a commercial break calling my wife and just being like, hey, get back home. Make sure you got my oldest son, that you guys are back home and that you're not out in downtown Nashville tonight. I think that's smart. I hope that people behave peacefully as the mom of Tyre Nichols has requested that people do. After what happened in the wake of the George Floyd incident, I'm not confident that people all over this country are going to remain calm. And, Buck, my number one concern right now is that Memphis has decided to release this video, according to reports, right as it gets dark on a Friday headed into the weekend when people have lots of free time, when young people are not required to get up early tomorrow morning and go to school, when they're headed into a weekend. This seems like a really poor choice to me in timing. I would rather this come out at 7 a.m. on a Wednesday than right after dark in Memphis on a Friday. That seems like a poor choice. Maybe the fact that there are 5 black cops involved here is going to make the reaction, frankly, less significant and severe than it would be if there were 5 white cops. In fact, I would suggest that there probably already would be rioting if the cops in this case had been white. And the video is as bad as they have said, the officials in Memphis, that it is. But I would just tell everybody out there, we'll take your calls. I'm curious to hear from Memphis people. Be careful tonight because in cities and communities, it may be dangerous.
Yeah, so our number is 800-282-2882. Also would want to hear from law enforcement officers in the next hour, what your thoughts are as this is unfolding. Honestly, we could have law enforcement weigh in on either the Pelosi video, because it's interesting, Kim Strassel brought up a point that there may be some criticism, and she moderated this or modified it a little bit, but the cops, when they saw Pelosi there, there wasn't really a lot of action. It happens quickly, and it's a lot easier to recognize the danger after the guy has been hit with a hammer in the head and in a almost lethal attack. But was there anything that would have been different there from a police procedure standpoint? The whole thing, there's some oddities that I think make it really hard. I mean, I don't blame the cops at all in that circumstance given the phone call that they received.
I think the 911 operator, if you want to criticize anybody in San Francisco, Paul Pelosi drops his name. He drops Nancy Pelosi's name. There wasn't, you have been called, police. 911 operator, ask some leading questions. Do you feel that don't require him to explain it in front of DePape, right? Do you feel that you're in danger? That seems like a pretty significant question, not putting bells and whistles together here. The 911 operator didn't seem like she did a very good job.
Another weird thing, I just thought about this. DePape was there while he was making the call, which we did. Right. He could hear him. So he knows this guy's calling the police. He didn't attack him then. And, he said that weird thing about we're getting the mind. The guy is clearly truly, criminally insane. This is somebody who's criminally insane. He's out of his mind. But, it's just for the way this guy got set off. I mean, I guess you couldn't see it coming in a sense because he was very calm until that one moment when the cops arrived, and then he flipped out.
And maybe Pelosi was saying, hey, I need to call the police. Maybe they know where Nancy Pelosi is. Let me call if you want to have a conversation with her, and was able to convince him that made sense. But he did not get very much help from that 911 operator, which ties in with what the police were told. They weren't told this was a violent hostage potential situation.
I don't think Pelosi thought it was either.
Yeah.
Third hour of Clay and Buck gets going right now, everybody. Right now, as we speak to you, RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel is fighting for re-election. They're having the RNC meeting out in Dana Point, California. You ever been to Dana Point, Clay? I hear it's very nice.
I think so. Where is Dana Point? Exactly.
I was waiting for you to tell me, buddy. You're the.
I've been all over. I think it is. Well, I'm going to look it up now because I think I have been to Dana Point. I spent so much time out in California over the years. Orange County So, yes, I think I have been to Dana Point. I've spent so much time in the L.A. area that it's not a bad area, right? I know there is a lot of anger over the way California is run right now, but because Fox Sports is based out in L.A., I've spent years of my life, it feels like, off and on, traveling out to L.A. and been everywhere. Lots of great friends out there. So, Dana Point, very nice area.
I think that California as a physical location is one of the hardest places to beat in the U.S. Yeah, I know there are national parks in Montana, and there's a lot of rugged beauty out there. But if you're a beach and coast guy, California's pretty amazing. And look, we can hope for one day California regaining its governing sanity. It's going to take a while. It might take a few decades, but it could happen at some point. California's a state that gave us Ronald Reagan. California used to be a pretty solidly Republican. You go back to the days of Nixon, and it was a pretty solidly Republican state. And here we are now seeing that it's not that anymore, that's for sure. So they're voting as we speak to you. The Republican members of the RNC are voting on who will be the next Republican National Committee chair. Looks like it's going to be either Harmeet Dillon or Ronna McDaniel, who has had the job for years now. And, you know, how much of a difference does the RNC chair make? I think that's a fair point or a fair question to bring up. And I do think Harmeet is very widely respected. I know Harmeet a little bit more than I know Ronna. And I do think that there's just a sense people have, Clay, that after a few disappointing elections, which certainly 2018, 2020, 2022, all disappointing. Now, you could argue that 2020, with the exception of the presidency, went under the circumstances somewhat well, but certainly 2018 was not good. People forget, 2018, it looked like the Democrats didn't do that well in the House in terms of pickups. And then it actually ended up doing very well overall. There was something of a delayed blue wave there. I do think that new strategy, new approach is very compelling right now. It's not even a knock. I don't know Ronna. I can't speak to her managerial skills or anything else. Sometimes you just got to shake it up, right? I mean, wasn't Trump in 2016, what was really at the heart of the whole thing? Shaking up and at some level also just smashing parts of the system. I think that it's time for some change within the RNC. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Well, I think the bottom line, you just have to replicate the get out the vote effort that we've seen Democrats take advantage of since the COVID changes. And you can keep saying, oh, we only vote on Election Day. But when you look at the numbers, when you're trying to replace a huge deficit by a big turnout on Election Day, I think you have to recognize that the game has changed. And you need some young, dynamic leadership to acknowledge and recognize that. Speaking truth here, Republicans have not won the popular vote in a presidential election since 2004. That's a generation. That's 20 years, basically. We'll see what happens in 2024. But how do you get back to winning the popular vote, particularly considering that I think it's fair to say Democrats, by and large, have lost their minds, and their governing style has been a failure pretty much everywhere. California, where we started talking about earlier, the larger the blue denomination is in a state, the more people are choosing to leave that state. California, New York, Illinois. When Democrats take complete control of government, then really bad things follow. And people are voting with their own physical possessions and their location and abandoning blue states in favor of red states. So Republicans have to cash in on this.
Yeah, I think that it's fair to say that there's some great things about the mindset of, the ethos, the philosophy of a conservative, just as a very general thing. We look at what has worked, what does work. We look at history. We look at tradition, foundations of our society. We're suspicious of radical change. We're suspicious of people who say they have all the answers are new. Forget about what has been known up to this point. All the answers are presented suddenly. They've just been found. The downside politically, though, and I mean from a nuts and bolts running the machine side of things, is when it comes to adapting to new technology, to new strategies, to new laws even that are on the books. I think Republicans can be slow. I think that we like, and of course, tradition is a great thing. And, traditions of our republic are something that should be upheld and protected. But we can't always be traditional in how we get out the vote, right? We can't always be traditional in how we're reaching people, in the sense that adaptability and being sometimes willing to look at what is working for your opponents as a means of information dissemination, as a means of getting your message out to people, that matters. And I do think that we're in a point now where everywhere that there's going to be a political contest, we got to think of, how do we get the low probability voter out? Somebody who would probably come out for our side, but might not show up at all. How do we get people who are independents to swing to our side? How do we get base turnout to be as absolutely high as possible? And this is where you get into discussions about early voting, mail-in voting, ballot harvesting, and also messaging. We were talking about social media the other day. I know for a lot of people, politics is shaking hands and knocking on doors. Still very true. And our friends who have run for Congress recently, both successfully and unsuccessfully, have come on the show, will tell you that's still a big part of it. Old school fundraisers, having the chicken dinner and having everybody show up and, donate what they can. But there's also Facebook, and there's TikTok, and there's Instagram, and there's giant email lists, and they're sorting through data. And that's where the it's like, where does the RNC matter? Yeah, distributing money, but distributing money intelligently and strategically in a way that you win the elections you need to pursue the agenda. Because an agenda without wins is just talking points.
And also getting people who are Republicans to actually vote Republican. Because if you look at the close races in Nevada, where I'm out right now, the governor's office was pretty much the only incumbent that flipped nationwide. But if you look at Georgia in the Herschel Walker race, if you look at Nevada, if you look at the state of Arizona, you can be focused on independents and Democrats. But really the reason why Republicans lost in those states was because they had people who flipped over and were willing to vote Republican on many races, but voted Democrat. They split their tickets. So that has to be acknowledged and looked at. By the way, we're talking about two different stories that have been ongoing throughout the course of the program. The release of the Paul Pelosi video, which we will continue to break down. If you haven't seen it, you can go watch it yourself. We've played the 911 calls. We've kind of pieced together everything on that case. Also, Tyre Nichols, 29-year-old Memphis dad who was killed by 5 black Memphis police officers. That video is going to be released at 6 p.m. Central, 7 o'clock on the East Coast, and at 4 p.m. on the West Coast. Could lead to some danger out there. We put out the APB for Memphis residents. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? We'll take your calls on that. We also want to take your calls in this final hour for any law enforcement that wants to react to the Paul Pelosi video. Maybe you guys do as well. The number 800-282-2882. And I believe Katie in Memphis calling to give us a sense for what's going on in the city of Memphis. Katie, what does it feel like in Memphis right now as people in that city get ready for the release of the police video?
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Memphis City Schools have canceled all after-school activities, so no games, nothing. Everything is shut down after school.
And that's a pretty big deal. Sorry to cut you off, Katie, but in Memphis, like no basketball games going on a Friday. That would be fairly common in the state of Tennessee. Friday night, high school basketball. All of that's been canceled at all schools and all events. That's a pretty big news. I didn't know that.
Correct. And also I think there's winter dances this weekend. Those have been canceled. But now suburbs, I'm in the suburb. Those suburb schools are all activities as usual.
Are you at all nervous about what the fallout is going to be in Memphis when this video comes out based on what has been already shared and conveyed publicly?
Absolutely. Everyone I have talked to is nervous. I've been out running errands, grocery store shopping. It's kind of here in the Midwest, when it snows, everyone runs to the grocery store and they say, I'm planning on staying in for the next 2 days. That's kind of the sense here. Everyone is just very apprehensive. A lot of people are saying we're praying for our city. That's just kind of the feel around here. Everyone is praying loving on each other, telling everyone to be careful, be safe, and stay in.
Thank you for calling in. And, Clay, there's just everyone knows we've been through this before, and the country, dozens, if not hundreds of different cities across America have been through this before. When there's anger about an incident of police violence in some, whatever the specific case may be, destroying things only makes everything worse. And we should all be there's no leeway on that. There is absolutely nothing but support and respect for people using their First Amendment rights to get out there in the streets and say this was unjust, to come together to try to heal as a community, to call for it. Now, I do want to talk, if there already is discussion of policy change, and we should have that discussion, because I think we need to be very careful about calling for policy changes in an emotional moment that will actually result in more violence for more people, this is reality. We're having discussions, among people that want the best for every community, including the community of Memphis. But it's so beyond the pale at this point that there would be, Antifa or, BLM anarchist types or whomever taking up this as a moment to attack innocent people's stores or homes or property, or to throw rocks at the faces of cops who don't actually have anything to be sorry for because they weren't there. They didn't do it. You know what I mean? We need to come down a lot hard. If any of that stuff happens, the whole country needs to come down really hard on those who still think that burning down or looting your local store is somehow achieving justice.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why, to start the show, I said, in addition to praying for the people of the city of Memphis, I think so many National Guard, State Guard, police officers who are busting their asses and working incredibly hard to try to protect everybody across this country are now going to be, unfortunately, targets if there is going to be an uprising in these cities. And I talked about this earlier. I want everybody back home and safe.
Yeah, I remember when during the BLM riots, summer of 2020, there was video, and there was a lot of this stuff all over the place. But when there were some federal officers who were sent to try to help protect a courthouse that was having Molotov cocktails and incendiary devices thrown at the courthouse. They're trying to light a courthouse on fire, federal court building. And then they were shining lasers in the eyes, these laser pointers, with the hope that they would blind people, which is a horrific thing to try to do to somebody. And they were throwing bags of urine and feces at these police officers. That's someone's dad. You know what I mean? This stuff really gets forgotten. That's someone who's doing a job that our country, that our people have asked them to do. They're standing on that line. They're protecting our society. And as long as they do so honorably and within the law, they should be respected and supported. And instead, you have these lunatics literally throwing bags of urine. It was disgusting, the stuff. So it's not even just the violence against the cops from these anarchist groups that should be absolutely abjectly condemned. It's the complete disrespect of law enforcement that happens. Maybe this is not even a discussion we have to have at all. Maybe people act appropriately despite their very emotions are running very high, and people are going to be very upset. We've been told that, and understandably so. But there's just never any excuse for attacking innocent people in any context because you're angry. We just have to draw a very hard line on that. And I think I'm hoping we don't have to have that discussion, but I worry that come Monday after this weekend, we may. Look, let's talk about the economy for a second, because it's rough out there. Inflation, stock market up and down all the time. Retirement accounts have gotten slammed over the last 12 months or so. There's a lot of economic uncertainty out there. So what can you do now? The Phoenix Capital Group suggests you diversify your investments. They're introducing investors to high-value oil and gas here in the U.S. with current yields which range from 8% to 11% APY paid monthly. These are corporate bond offerings. They're open to all investors, and that annual interest is paid monthly. Phoenix Capital Group offers live webinars to learn about Phoenix's business structure, ways they offer security for the offerings, risks, and their financials. They host live Q&As where they'll answer all your questions. You can sign up at investingwithphx.com. That's investingwithphx.com, or call 323-PHOENIX. Investment in bonds has a certain risk. Before making investment decisions, you should carefully consider and review all risks involved. Sign up today at investingwithphx.com. That's investingwithphx.com or call 323-PHOENIX. That's 323-PHOENIX to connect.
Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show, Friday edition of the program. I want to get some more of these calls from Memphis as the Tyre Nichols video of his beating and death proposed arrest to be released at 6 p.m. Central, 7 o'clock on the East Coast, 4 o'clock on the West Coast today. What does it feel like in that city right now? John in Memphis, what are you seeing on the ground?
I work for a utility company, so I'm in and out of town all the time, all around town. It's not that bad right now. I don't feel a lot of tension. I work with a lot of guys, a lot of African-American guys. You know, we're getting along fine. It's not a lot of tension at work. And there's nothing going on around town right now. It doesn't seem like we're hoping it doesn't get too bad. And we're thinking maybe.
So you're cautiously optimistic based on what you're seeing that when this video comes down that Memphis may stay peaceful and calm.
Yeah, we're hoping so. You know, the weather's going to move in. It's going to turn cold. It's going to start raining. We're going to get sleet and ice. So maybe the release was timed with the weather, maybe to dissuade folks from getting, a little wild. But yeah, we're hoping.
No, that's interesting. I appreciate you sharing that because if there's a weather system coming in, that could factor in as well with the decision to release this video at 6 p.m. Central. That's a good bit of knowledge there I didn't have.
Absolutely. I mean, this is true whenever there's concerns about a protest that could morph into a riot of some kind. Weather has a big factor. Weather has a big factor on crime, and weather can make a big difference on a whole lot of different realities of the street. So let's just hope it's a quiet and peaceful weekend, or a peaceful, law-abiding weekend, a better way of even putting it. We'll come back into more of this in a moment. 800-282-2882 on the phone lines. Give us a call. One of your goals this year is to do business with companies who share your values. Then why not start with your cell phone service provider? Switch to Pure Talk. That's the company I use. They may be the perfect antidote to woke wireless, to coin a phrase here. They're proudly veteran-owned, and they proudly employ a U.S.-based customer service team. They give great value, excellent service. Pure Talk's service is one of the largest networks in the country. That's what it's based on. You're going to get really fast data, talk, and text for just $30 a month. That's probably half what you're paying for Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile. Keep your phone number, switch over in as little as 10 minutes. Plus, Pure Talk has a first-month risk-free guarantee. Try it, and if you're not completely happy with your Pure Talk service, you'll get your money back. Grab your cell phone and dial pound 250. Say Clay and Buck. You'll be connected to their customer service team who will help you save an additional 50% off your first month. Again, dial pound 250. Say the words Clay and Buck. Dial pound 250. Say Clay and Buck. Pure Talk is simply smarter wireless. Welcome back to Clay and Buck. A couple of things happening right now as we speak to you all across the country. The RNC is voting for who will be the RNC chair. I guess we say chair instead of chairman now. Is that we've changed? Is it? I thought it was chair. We went to chairperson for a little while. Used to always be the chairman. Now we just refer to somebody as the chair, the inanimate object. I don't know. It seems kind of strange to me. If we're not important,
I hadn't even thought about it, but that's interesting. I guess so. Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like if you're talking about, I don't know. I think it strikes me as a bit odd. Anyway, the RNC voting is underway right now. We'll tell you if we have any updates on that. It's either going to be Harmeet Dillon or Ronna McDaniel. And that's going on right now. Also, the White House is briefing right now in the West Wing. Karine Jean-Pierre, she just said she was asked about the Tyre Nichols case, said that the White House wants justice for Tyre Nichols. She said for his family. She did not specify much beyond that, said she didn't want to weigh in too heavily into this case. And Clay, right now we haven't seen, usually by this time, I think you would start to see video. Now, I'm just going on what has happened in other instances like this. Usually you start to see video of the gatherings that do often start out with just people together. I haven't even seen that yet. So there is still the possibility here that there will be nothing in the way of extreme destruction or any kind of riot situation in Memphis. That's possible. We haven't seen any video of Antifa gathering or any of that. So we're all hopeful for this. One thing that I do want to point out, Clay, is that there's a discussion right now that's already underway. New York Times is reporting on it, that the Nichols family is calling for substantial changes in policing after this incident. Now, we still haven't seen the video, so we're talking about an incident for which there is far more conclusive evidence than what we have been able to see in the general public. But they want the disbandment of the unit. This is the family and the lawyer speaking on behalf of the Nichols family, which I believe was called the Scorpion Unit. I think in general, I'm not sure. Have you seen that too, by the way? It's called the Scorpion Unit.
No, I haven't seen the specifics, but that I think you're hitting on something that is going to become a very important conversation here. And we'll play a couple of these audio clips here in a sec, too, to kind of contextualize. But we got to be careful that we don't allow a George Floyd 2.0 situation where all police get lambasted as awful individuals and crime skyrockets again all over the country as if these bad cops are representative of everyone.
It's exactly what I want to get us to now in our discussion. I just was looking up. Yeah, Scorpion. It's obviously a word. It's an acronym for Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods. It is a 50-person unit in the Memphis Police Department that is supposed to specifically address violent crime. Now, Memphis has, is it top 3, Clay? Top 5? One of the most
worst
violent cities in the entire United States. So here's what we definitely know. Memphis needs serious and well-supported police and enforcement of the law. Desperately needs that. Okay, it's falling far short of what it should have. I am reminded though by this call, and I understand it's an emotional time. People, it's tough, Clay, because you say let's have a conversation about policy, how to change things, how to make sure that there aren't incidents of this kind of police violence that occur. Now, overall, and this is where you also get into the statistics. Police violence of this kind is, fortunately, very rare when you look at the numbers in this country of arrests, police interaction. Our cops are, and I think people forgot this after George Floyd, and we know what happened, our cops are overwhelmingly good people doing a critical job, and they deserve support and thanks for it. Not all, obviously, but overwhelmingly. So this unit reminds me a little bit of the discussion that we had in New York City. Remember, after George Floyd, remember what they did? They got rid of this plainclothes unit that was really the anti-street violence unit. Now, these are guys who, and I know about these guys from when I was spending time in the NYPD. These are guys who are veterans of the department, know their neighborhoods well, know how to read the street. I mean, these are the guys doing the real cop work. I was sitting in an air-conditioned office looking at fancy reports and, reporting to the commissioner and the deputy commissioner. Those guys were the guys tackling somebody who, was just trying to, bludgeon grandma and steal her purse in the street. Those are the guys who were doing that kind of work. They got rid of that. And what happened? Violence skyrocketed. Now, what that means is they got rid of an aggressive police unit in New York, and more people, and disproportionately more Black and Hispanic New Yorkers were the victims of heinous violent crimes once the unit was gone. So we have to look at the honest reality of the consequences of the police reforms that people are calling for here and not just be pushed by emotion.
I think that's 100% right. And the legacy of George Floyd from a criminal perspective, right? Like what has happened in the wake of the George Floyd incident was violence skyrocketed, murders skyrocketed all over this country, and the demonization of police made everybody less safe. So we understand sometimes police commit crimes. These 5 officers have been charged with second-degree murder. They've already been arrested before this video even comes out. Sometimes police break the law. When that happens, they deserve to be prosecuted. But it doesn't mean that all police everywhere should be disrespected or that you have to necessarily change what the policies that are in place are. And sometimes in reacting to awful viral videos and incidents, we erase all of the positive things. Remember, this is important about Memphis, Buck, and I talked about this in the first hour. City of Memphis, as you mentioned, one of the highest per capita murder rates and violent crime rates in the entire country. Also, just in the last 6-8 months, they had the disastrous, awful, brutal murder of Eliza Fletcher, a mom who had gone out for a jog in Memphis and was attacked by a guy who had been let out of jail early. They since have passed some laws in Tennessee to try to stop that from happening, my home state. Also, the guy went on Facebook, Buck, and videoed himself driving all over the city of Memphis, shooting innocent people. That came in close proximity to that. People said, hey, we need more protection from violent criminals in Memphis. And now you have police who are supposed to be protecting people potentially committing a crime as well. It can simultaneously be the case that police need to be more able to do their job in Memphis and that some police are bad. That can happen. That's a reality.
Yes, and that's what the real conversation, if it's about preventing police excessive use of force while also keeping people safe, and if you're looking at the difference, how many people are the victims of excessive force, certainly of lethal excessive force in Memphis, versus how many people are going to be shot if there's an additional crime wave, right? You're talking about a far greater loss of life, far more violence against the people of Memphis or any city where you would apply this same situation. In 2022, there were 302 homicides in Memphis. There were 346 homicides in Memphis in 2021. By way of comparison, New York City in 2022 had, according to CompStat, 438 murders. Clay, Memphis has how many? I mean, I got to look at the population of Memphis real quick.
It's less than 1 million people live in Shelby County. Now, I don't know how they define the Memphis population as a whole.
Memphis,
Shelby County is less than 1 million.
The city of Memphis, they say, is 600,000. So with 600,000 people, Memphis had over 300 murders. With 8.5 million people, New York City had 400 plus murders, to give folks a sense of how concentrated the violence is in that city. I'll bring this up because disband the Scorpion unit. Look, I wouldn't call for law enforcement purposes. I think I would stay away from, things that sound menacing. I'm just going to say it. I don't think that's a great, PR move. If you want, SWAT is an acronym, and that doesn't, you don't want to call things like, the Cobras or the Scorpions or things like that if it's a police unit. I'm just
calling police a violent predator, not necessarily a great move.
Right, but okay, but that's that's something that's a straightforward fix. That said, what happens if you disband this unit? Because if the answer is, let's just say this based on the data, Clay. If the answer is, let's disband the primary anti-violence police unit in Memphis and only replace it with violence interrupters, which is people on the left will talk about this. It's kind of like social workers who are trained to intervene, and more social workers, which is what actually some of the anti-cop movements often talk about. You are going to have 350 murders again in Memphis over the next 12. Maybe they'll even get even higher than that over the next 12 months. That's what's going to happen. So we need to be honest about the reality of policy and policy change when it comes to law enforcement.
We'll play some of this audio to close out the week in advance of the release of this video. And hopefully, again, people of Memphis and around the nation will be able to not respond violently here. And hopefully everybody who's out there trying to protect the streets will be safe. But we'll close out the show and the week with that call for peace, actually from the mom of the victim here, Tyre Nichols. I want to tell you, though, I am on the road right now. I'm out in Las Vegas, having a fabulous time. But you know what's not great? Sheets. Sheets on my hotel room bed, nowhere near as good as the Giza Dream sheets that I have at my home. I miss the Giza Dream Sheets. They are phenomenal, cost less than $30. Lowest price ever, in fact, at $29.98 when you use our names as the promo code Clay and Buck. Every MyPillow product comes with a 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guaranteed, including Giza Dream Sheets. This means you can sleep on them for 2 full months before making a final decision. Go to MyPillow.com. Click on the radio listener specials to check out the sale on the Giza Dream Sheets. Remember to use the code Clay and Buck or call 800-792-3269. Do it today. Welcome back in. Clay, Travis, Buck Sexton Show, closing up shop here for the week. Encourage you to go subscribe to the podcast. We want all of you all over the country to be safe, especially in Memphis. I want to play a couple of cuts here. This is Rovon Wells, who is the mom of Tyre Nichols, calling for calm on Thursday. She does not want anybody out in the streets protesting. Let's play cut 25.
It's going to be horrific, but I want each and every one of you to protest in peace. I don't want us burning up our cities, tearing up the streets, because that's not what my son stood for.
Okay, I also want to play this, giving you an indication. The family has already been shown the video. Lots of political figures already shown the video. This was also the mom this morning talking about what watching the video was like for her. Again, Rovon Wells, mother of Tyre Nichols. Listen to this cut.
Yes, he cried out for me because I'm his mother. And that's what he was trying to get home to safety. And it was funny. I was in the room earlier and my stomach started hurting so bad. And I went into the den. I told my husband, my stomach is hurting so bad. And once I found out what happened, it was just the fact that I was feeling my son's pain. I was feeling my son's pain when they were beating him to death.
So it's going to be brutal based on all. I mean, that's incredibly difficult for any mom or dad to think about. And again, reports are from the Memphis police chief, this 29-year-old who was pulled over, 5 black cops have been charged with murder, that he didn't do anything wrong. And so when this video comes out, and reports are that it's coming out at 7 Eastern, 4 o'clock on the West Coast, 6 o'clock after dark in Memphis on Friday, I hope people stay peaceful, but that is the mother of the victim here speaking out.
Well, it just also shows that anyone who takes this as an opportunity to attack innocent people or destroy innocent people, I mean, to engage in their own violence and destruction, is doing so against the explicit wishes of the family of the victim here. So they cannot pretend to be some kind of warriors for justice here for the family. The family has said, please stay peaceful. Don't do anything in our son's name that is going to hurt innocent people or destroy or create anarchy in the streets. And credit to the mother, because I can't think of anything that would be more emotionally difficult than watching the video and what she went through as a mother. I just can't imagine something more difficult than that. But for her to have the strength of character and ability and frame of mind to say, we grieve, we'll speak out about this, we should seek justice for this, but to do so in a way that doesn't create injustice in the process. Anyone who's paying attention to this case knows that Tyre's mother has spoken out in this way, and so there shouldn't be any confusion if people decide that they're going to use this for their own. They're going to hijack this moment for their own purposes, to just express their rage or political points or whatever the case may be.
And they've already charged all 5 cops with second-degree murder. So this idea of, hey, there's not being justice meted out in form of police charges. And by the way, all 5 of these police officers, because you are presumed innocent until guilty, is entitled to the fullest defense of the law. And they may have a defense that has not been publicly delivered yet. So you have to keep that in mind as you go forward, that all 5 of these cops have the right to a jury trial of their peers and to be presumed innocent.
Yeah.
They've lost their jobs and they've been charged.
I cannot remember a time when there has been so much official commentary about something that the public, we don't know. We sit here, we haven't seen the video. And to your point about the 5 officers, there may be a whole range of culpability that comes out from the video.
Correct.
We just don't know. And so that's why, hopefully everyone will keep a calm head on the streets of really every American city this weekend. And we'll see this video the next couple of hours. Obviously, we'll be talking about it, Clay, a lot on Monday.
Yeah, and I hope we're talking about peaceful protest and not multiple American cities burning and lots of riots. We're praying for the city of Memphis. It's been a rough 6 to 8 months there in particular, and also for all the police officers, all the National Guardsmen, state guardsmen that are going to be called out to potentially have to protect the cities, the communities that they serve, who do nothing but give their lives, put their lives on the line every single night. We're thinking about all of you on the Clay and Buck Show. As we roll into the weekend, we'll be back reacting to everything that happens here on Monday as well. Also, a lot of discussion about the Pelosi tape earlier in the show. If you missed that, go subscribe to the podcast. We'll see you Monday.